The Auburn Tigers land another stud.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen. Every single day, we are joined by Auburn recruiting expert and the Locked On podcast recruiting expert, Brian Smith. And our coverage of recruiting is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why you got to check out our friends at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Brian, the Tigers add another big man to the offensive front, as well as the 2025 class. Jacobe Ward, the standout. We think he's going to be an interior offensive lineman from Savannah, Georgia, a guy who you're really high on. And it sounds like this coaching staff is really high on, but he chose the Tigers today.
Yeah, he had SEC offers from programs like LSU, Alabama, Tennessee. He's a massive young man, 330 pounds. He plays right tackle at Benedictine Military School in Savannah, but I think he'll play guard, at least initially, for Auburn. In time, it's possible he could move to tackle, but Auburn's alleviating some of those issues within this recruiting class as well, Roderick Scholl, et cetera. So Auburn is in a really good place because this kid's a powerhouse, and you just can't teach his feet, especially at that size.
Yeah. So for folks who are unfamiliar with Ward, the newest member of this class, Brian, I know you just kind of gave you mentioned a few of the strengths, but overall, what are they getting out of this kid?
Power player, downhill, we're going to run over you. Third down and one, he's a guy that you will choose to run behind. Down blocks well, moves well in space. I mean, he's a very mobile athlete that you just can't teach the natural size that he has with that. So fits the SEC to a T.
Last time you came on, I asked your opinion of him because he's a 3-star across the board, and you've kind of given us the education of, Savannah is not really scouted a ton. So a lot of those guys from that part of the country or that part of Georgia, they usually fly under the radar. I was talking to folks over the last few days within the program. I mean, it sounds like Jake Thornton is incredibly high on Jacobe Ward. So, I mean, this does not come as a shock to you.
Nope. This is why doing your own evaluations is so important.
Yeah.
If you're going to win, you have to find guys that fit what you do, not what some recruiting service says. And I work in the recruiting industry. Like all these guys that do this are my friends, but every school has a different ranking for a reason. I mean, he may not be as high on Bama's board or Tennessee's or whatever. Maybe it is higher. What are you going to do with the player? And then again, you have to go to all these places and put in the time. Benedictine's won a couple of state titles recently. They're well coached. The coach there's a great guy. They do all the little things. So he's going to be prepared on and off the field. That also, to me, adds a little bit more to his evaluation. When you win in high school and you take that to the college level, it's important. There's really just nothing not to like about him. He's a big piece of clay to work with. Yeah, and sure, he has technique to get better at because offensive linemen always do.
Yeah. You
just can't teach all the intangibles that he has naturally to him. And he's a really aggressive kid, too. Auburn needs to be better at just running right. Like think about Georgia and Alabama in the last 10 years or so. It was generic football most of the time, but they were just better than you at it. This is the kind of player they got. I'm all in on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Auburn was able to do in 2017, the last time they really had with Carry On, and then 2013 when they went to the national championship. I mean, everybody knew it's like, all right, well, either Nick Marshall or Trey Mason's going to run it, but we can't do anything about it. You need offensive linemen to do that. And so now the addition of Jacobe Ward beefs up that offensive front even more. What's the dynamic of recruiting a guy that most of the scouting services project him to play inside? I mean, those guys typically aren't rated as high as the offensive tackles. Right. Does that play into this at all, Brian?
Yeah, this is a very bad trend in my industry here. They try to mirror to the best of their ability where they think guys will eventually go in the draft.
In the NFL draft, which you don't draft guards and centers day one typically.
No. So even a guy that is a top 100 kid at guard, if you took that same skill set and you put it at flanker, at defensive end, at quarterback, you go way up the board. Yeah. So that's the other part of it. So I look at it like, okay, look at the offers. I mean, Alabama doesn't offer kids for the heck of it. Tennessee doesn't. LSU doesn't.
Right.
These are schools that get massive offensive linemen every year, and they recruited to get. So I'm not really concerned about it. The other part, again, it's fit. Auburn wants to be a play action team with RPO base. You've got to have a guy on the inside that can carve out space so you could run inside zone, inside trap, whatever you want to do. It's just my guy's better than yours.
Yeah.
You're finding a fit, and that can never be undersold. It's the most important category here. How does Ward fit the Auburn offense? And it's really good.
So when Jacobe Ward announced that he was going to be committing today on the 6th, he put out the tweet on June 28th. His top 3 reportedly were Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee. Sounds like Miami made a strong push late. I know you also have a lot of connections to Miami. Did you hear anything about that?
That's one of the kids they looked at, and they got Herbert Scroggins, the kid that almost went to Auburn. Miami does a tremendous job as scouting the state of Georgia, and their staff is really good. I know Alex Mirabal, their O-line coach. I trust him impeccably. He's a top 5 line coach in the country.
Well, Cristobal's an O-line guy too, right?
Yeah, he played O-line at the U.
Right.
He got 2 rings while he was at Miami. He knows what it looks like. So their evaluation on O-line's pretty good. And to be really honest, there aren't many programs that are going to try to play more power football than Miami. So it's a little different. They don't run as much RPO, but they are a downhill running team. They wanted this kid too. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
So Auburn did a really good job here.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Thornton did a good job of making him seem like a priority, and he was a priority. And I mean, just talking to folks, sounds like Auburn is higher on Ward than most people, which I'm sure goes a long way talking to the kid. I'm sure they're very upfront of how important he is to this class. And so props to Thornton and Freeze for getting this done.
They had multiple guys recruiting him, checking in with him each day. You're not going to do that unless you personally evaluate him at a very high level.
Yeah.
That's just reality. The great players get contact every day in recruiting.
Yeah, there's no question. There's no question. All right, so let's jump into what this class now looks like on the offensive front. It's very exciting. We haven't been able to do this in a long time at Auburn. So let's talk about all these offensive linemen that are currently committed. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got over 122 million parts for your vehicle. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. Or, of course, you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. And so with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins with eBay Motors. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Brian, when you look at this class now, 5 really solid offensive linemen committed. Broderick Scholl, Tavares Dice right now, those are probably your bookend tackles of the future. I don't think that's a crazy take at all. And then you look at Ty Buster, the other interior offensive lineman that Jacobe Ward joins. Then Spencer Dowland, who seems as locked in as anybody, listed as an offensive tackle. We'll see how he progresses and where he plays down the line. But this group of 5, Brian, is this the kind of situation where you're like, you know what? These 5 guys are solid. These 5 guys could all play at the SEC level in a few years. We're good. Or are there still other guys you potentially look at if you're Auburn?
I'll steal your own line. You can take more. I've heard you say that a few times on this show and during phone conversations with me.
Right.
Auburn is not going to turn down like Babalola, the kid from Kansas City, somebody like that. There's Malachi Goodman from New Jersey. I'm not saying this will happen, but if those wanted to come,
you figure it out.
Yeah, because those are potential NFL players. So Auburn just has recruited O-line so poorly out of the high school ranks for so long. They got to turn that around.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody leaves or transfers, whatever, it is what it is. We're to the era now where you take as many good ones as you can. Who doesn't make it transfers out. That's the era we're in. So the transfer portal is at least shifted in some way, which Lord only knows with that. But Auburn needs to take at least 5. They did. And now you're going big game hunting. The kids left on the board or elite prospects, like Penn State really wants, and they recruit New Jersey really well. That's not easy pull for Auburn, but he's visited, had a good visit. You're talking about Below as a kid that's an elite academic kid. He likes Stanford a lot. Maybe he goes there, maybe he doesn't. But like, you just have to recruit these kids and say, look, we don't have a lot of depth. You're a great player. You got a chance to come in here and play. Winner, at the positions, who plays? We don't care. Auburn doesn't have the depth that some of these other schools are recruiting against for the most part, Stanford aside. So they have a chance to get some elite players still. I don't think it's done at 5.
I mean, that would be incredible. And like, these guys seem so locked in, which is a huge part of this. I mean, obviously the decommitment of Carday Smith a few weeks ago. I mean, you think he's done? You think Auburn still pursues him, or are they looking elsewhere at this point?
I mean, you'll keep contact, but like, that was a really weird deal with his decommit. I didn't know much about it, but with the days of NIL and all these kids taking additional visits, et cetera, after they commit, it's crazy. So I don't count any kid until they sign. That's first.
Sure.
But I didn't hear anything like this was leading up. Then like 3-4 days before, I'm like, oh, I got some word. And I'm like, that's not a good sign. He may go elsewhere. Yeah. But now Auburn has picked up another guy that's really good, and they're still in on a couple. They prepared themselves, because you're not going to hit all home runs here. You're going to swing and miss. Auburn did a good job of having a big enough board to help make up room. And let's be honest, their only objective is to compete with LSU, Alabama, and Georgia. Those are the 3 main rivals, and they're usually top of the SEC. This is the kind of lineman class already where you can start to do that. If they add another, then it really, really helps your program.
Yeah, I mean, if you have multiple classes like this in 2 or 3 years, you're good to go. You compete with anybody, which is exactly what they want to do. That's exactly what they want to do. So Jacobe Ward, the newest member of this 2025 class, a 6'4", 330-pounder from Savannah, Georgia. Brian, you'll have a bunch of stuff up about Jacobe Ward. How can people check all of it out?
At auburndaily.com and at FBScout_Florida. Auburn is going to end up with the top 10 class conservatively. And if they have a couple more good news pieces coming this month, top 5 is not out of the question.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. We'll see if they get that quarterback. That's going to be the big story starting back again next week. Please like the video. Please subscribe, and we will see you on Monday. This has been Locked On Auburn.